So welcome back. I hope you had a nice break. And this afternoon we will move into the section of the text where Tongme Sampo covers the 6 perfections, 6 parameters, or the 6 far-reaching attitudes, which is the practices of the Bodhisattva. And they are generosity, ethics, patience, joy, meditation, and wisdom. And in our study group, we reached the patience first. And I want to start off there because I think the practice of patience is something which is helpful in these times. In our first meditation, I want to go back to the instruction to rely on silence. And again, to repeat the metaphor, the content of your experience can be seen as a stream, like a river. In Tibetan, that is called Sem, or the conditioned mind, the relative mind. And that is the stream of the sense data, the 5 sense data, plus what our conceptual mind does with this information. So the meaning we give, the labels we give, and how we relate to these, to the input, to the input of the sense data. And it is called conditions because it is dependent on many other things. It's like an open system, an open process. It is connected with everything else. In the Buddhist teachings, it is seen as the display of your karma. So it's not created by a creator God, nor is it just happening by chance, but it has causes. And these causes are found in the way how we treated others in the past. So in a way, from this point of view, the outside world is a reflection of your inner world. Yeah? And the manifestation in the so-called outside world are an opportunity for a practitioner to heal or to purify the inner world. And the way we handle or the way we respond to what is happening in the so-called outer world then creates our future. Yeah? So if we, for example, if we experience lack in our outer world, from this point of view, this would be a sign of a lack of generosity within us. And unfortunately, when there's lack in the so-called outer world, we respond with less generosity. So we respond to the outside lack with the same pattern, which is the very cause of the lack in the outside world. And that makes the spiral. So there's lack, and we respond with lack of generosity. We become more greedy, more defensive, and that creates more lack in the so-called outer world. So, and then when we go down that spiral, we end up in what is called the hungry ghost realm, yeah? Which is not a place, it's a state of mind. But because there is lack within us, we see more and more lack outside, and we become more and more scared, more and more greedy, and we see less and less. And the way to break that pattern is the counter-instinctual move. If we have little, to give more, yeah. And of course, that's the hungry ghost in us doesn't want to do that, yeah. When there's less, then the hungry ghost in us wants to keep the things for himself or herself, and unknowingly creates more lack through that. So the practice of relying on silence is the practice of stepping out of that river in the what you could call the witness perspective, or the observer. Sometimes it's also called the observer eye. Yeah? So obviously that is still dualistic. It's like a provisional step, which is a big relief, and it creates the space for us not to be swept away by our reactivity. Let's say you have the impulse not to share, and that impulse is out of your control. It's the hungry ghost in you. But when you step out of that, out of these reactive patterns, then you start to have freedom. Yeah? That's the freedom we have. Yeah? And we try to increase that freedom, that choice. Yeah? Do I really want to become a more greedy and nasty person when sources are scarce, or do I want to keep on holding up my values? If we don't make this step out, then our reactive patterns are so quick. They make us act. They make us do things, which we after might regret, and we lose our way. In a way, we lose the compass of our in our life. We compromise, yeah? And we become more unhappy because something in us realizes, I'm not living up to what I actually want to express in my life. So there's regret and guilt and unhappiness at the time of death. So stepping out, part of that is that we become just aware that what you are aware of are objects of awareness. It's not so easy to really get this point. Yeah, because when we are aware of something, there's immediately this collapse into identification. So to just clearly see, yeah, I'm aware of the sensation of the body. I'm aware of my feelings. I'm aware of my memories. I'm aware of my fears. There's two. There's the I, which is aware, and then there is what you're aware of. That also includes now the sense to be located in this body, in this room, in Sweden. All of that are objects of consciousness. Yeah. It's pretty obvious once you see it. Yeah. So whatever you feel, whatever you hear, whatever you think, whatever your body feels, all these are objects. Yeah? But what is the subject? What is the experiencer? Who is experiencing this? And obviously, the experiencer can't be experienced because then it becomes an object. So you can't experience the experiencer, you just can be it, or you can recognize that you are the experiencer. It's a bit like a flashlight or the light of a flashlight looking for the light. Yeah. So there's all the objects which are illuminated by the flashlight, by the light of the flashlight. And then suddenly the light of the flashlight thinks, hey, just a moment. There's the illumination of all these objects, but what is illuminating these objects? And then, of course, the only way the light of the flashlight can look is through itself, because that's the only thing which illuminates the subjects. So consciousness becomes curious about itself. It's called to become aware of being aware, to becoming conscious of being conscious. But of course, it doesn't find anything. Yeah, because then that what would be findable would be an object of consciousness, of awareness. And that is this moment of shift. There's a moment of shift. It's like Suddenly, after trying, the light realized, oh shit, I am the light. That's why I don't see it when I look for it, when I look for myself. And that's the shift. And that's awakening. Yeah. And that's what Ken MacLeod means when he says rely on silence. So you rely on that which you are already. It's impossible to explain this, but it is a very precise and recognizable shift of consciousness, and it is exactly the shift of the Buddha. So there is nothing, maybe it sounds a bit like wishy-washy, but it is actually precise and recognizable and repeatable. Yeah. It's the experience of the mystics in all traditions. The other, another aspect here is part of this is also the recognition of the non-static nature, the impermanent nature of the objects. That whatever happens within the moving mind, within the stream of consciousness, is vibrating, is changing, is moving, is some energetical movement, contraction, opening, disappearing, then something else comes. So this is, yeah, like a river, there's constant movement. This is an important part of feeling some relief, yeah, feeling more space, because you by seeing that you realize that it will pass. This too will pass. I don't need to do anything. I can just rest. And then the contraction, the difficult feeling, the difficult emotion will just pass by itself. If it's felt and if it has space. And the third is, part of this is also that, I mean, it comes with the insight that we are talking about objects, that whatever you experience right now, you experience with consciousness, with mind, with awareness. Yeah, it's obvious, but if you kind of become aware of that, it's quite mind-blowing. That it's impossible to prove that there's an outside world, because the only way you can look is with consciousness, and then it's inside. I'm not saying, or maybe I'm saying there's no outside world, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. So even if there is something out there, independent of consciousness, which is questionable, we would not be able to experience it. We would never be able to prove it. So everything we experience right now is within consciousness, within awareness, within mind. And the substance from what it is made is also consciousness, is also mind. So actually, the experience you have right now is made from the same stuff like your dreams. It's in the same place. Now, if you want to localize it, which we don't do in the Buddhist tradition, because it's for them it's not obvious that it is in the brain. But if you assume like a Western psychological view, then the experience you have right now is happening in the frontal cortex of your mind. The visual image you see. You don't see an outside world. You see a visual image which is created in the place where your dreams are created, and they are made from the same substance, from consciousness. So this is how the metaphor of the dream can be quite powerful. And And you can experience it. So when you go inside and you step out, then you experience that, or you can experience that whatever appears and comes and goes has no substance. It's like a rainbow. It's vividly appearing, but you can't put your finger on it. You can't even localize it. Yeah? And if you experience that, if you see that yourself, then you start to hold things more lightly. There's just more space then. Things lose their heaviness and their solidity, and you travel lighter. It's just like you put down this backpack which we're carrying around. You put it down, this backpack of seriousness and heaviness, and what about me? And it's also so terrible. And how do I get out of here? How can I get rid of this pain, of this mood? You put this backpack down because you are handling rainbows. You're fighting rainbows. So that doesn't, so this is not nihilistic, so it's not denying that these appearances exist, like a dream also exists, but a dream does not exist in the way it appears. And the same is true for this moment. It exists, it vividly appears, obviously. You have experiences, you see, you feel, you have thoughts, you have feelings. All that exists, but it does not exist in the way it appears. And meditation is the way to see this yourself. In the beginning, it's just what someone else said, yeah. But we check that. We check that up. So in this meditation, I want to again invite you to step out and then emphasize a bit the non-static nature of what comes and goes. And then again, at the end, this question. Okay, these are all objects. I am aware. But what is the I? What is the I which is aware? Yeah. Kind of turning around the attention, which is usually attached to the objects of attention, of awareness. You turn that attention around and you become curious about the source. So that's the moment where the flashlight starts to kind of bend the light back into its source. Oh, what is aware? What is consciousness? Obviously, I am conscious. I am aware. But what is that? If it exists, it must be something. It's a phenomena. It's happening. But what is that? Yeah? So, and then you turn around, and obviously you don't see anything, because what you're looking for is what is doing the looking. Yeah? So, because that's the only thing which can do the looking. Yeah? So the light is like, oh, the light, but the light is already illuminating itself. It does not need to have an extra light to be seen. It's light. So in the same way, consciousness is already aware of itself, and it is aware of the objects. So nothing needs to happen. It's not like you turn around and then suddenly you find something, because if you would find something, then it wouldn't be it, because then it would be an object of consciousness. But we are looking for the subject. We're looking for the experiencer. And that is the shift. And it is, it is undescribable. It is undescribable but recognizable. Yeah? It's already happening, but we are not aware of it. We don't see it. We don't recognize. We don't trust it. And then we try to find home or peace or stillness in the flow, which is completely silly because that whatever we would find there disappears. We're trying to find home or safety or love in something which is a sandcastle, will be swept away very soon. Okay, so let's take a few moments to adjust the posture and shift from the doing to the being. Now, after lunch, you might be a bit tired, and that's fine. So we're not trying to feel different than we are. We're just becoming aware. We just notice. Again, you can lightly place your mind on your breath, your attention, so you have an anchor to return to. How are you? What do you bring with you into this moment? And then it is possible with the out breaths to soften in the belly and in the shoulders, and to soften the struggle with what is happening in the present moment. And you open the space. You open the space of your heart, of your body, of your mind, like a sky. And the breath and your awareness becomes like a welcoming gesture. If there's something in the foreground, you allow that. You just make yourself bigger. And the thoughts, they become less important. They go somewhat into peripheral awareness, into the background, like a television program in the other room where you're not interested in, but it also is not bothering you. So it just does its own thing. And instead of relying on thoughts, we rely on presence. You unhook from thoughts. You lose interest in the thoughts. And you stay with the aliveness in your body, spacious aliveness. Also staying open to your surroundings, to the sounds there, and being aware that we are in a meeting, in a group, opening the space together. And then returning and resting. And then you allow the backward step. So you notice that there's the flow of the objects, of the content of your awareness, of consciousness, pleasant and unpleasant, outside and inside. It's all happening in the same place, including the sense of I, including your tiredness, including your memories and fears. All that are objects of consciousness. Is what you experience. And we allow it to flow as much as possible. Noticing when we try to manipulate it, that is also part of the flow. And you let it flow, you let it move. Non-static, permanent, flowing, changing nature of your experience. And if you notice that you get entangled, you step back. So all these experiences, what you experience right now, what you're conscious of or aware of, are happening within mind, within consciousness, within awareness. Like a dream. They are like rainbows, vividly appearing, but if you look, you see, you experience that there's no substance there, nothing you can put your finger on. So just look, feel, hear, or that kind of insight. And if there's something in your experience where you think, yeah, no, that's not changing, that's really solid, that's me, that's really serious, then you just look at it. You don't need to do anything, just look at it, feel it, hear it, and notice what is really there. And so you continue to make the backward step until there's nothing anymore to step back into. So there's the content, there's the movie on the screen, or the play on the stage, or the clouds in the sky. But then there's also the sky, There's also the stage, and there's the screen. There's that which is bigger. And that's where you look from. That's where the looking comes from nowhere, from everywhere. And the content of your awareness is not separate from the awareness of the content, but it's also not exactly the same. There is something else there. A knowingness, a luminosity, a spaciousness, presence, centerless and boundaryless, transpersonal, timeless. And you are the sky, not the clouds. You are the stage, not the drama. You are the screen, not the movie. And that space is not nothing. There's an aliveness, a tenderness, a mystery, a depth, a vastness, a deep peace, a fullness, a wholeness. Rest right there. Forget yourself and rest as the conscious space within which your life happens. And then if you get entangled, you make a backward step. So that knowingness, that is Buddha nature. That awakeness is Buddha nature. So, and if you get tired or drowsy or distracted, that doesn't matter. That's all objects of awareness. Just let everything be as it is. Let everything come and go and play out. You are not the weather, you are the sky. So then open your eyes. So it's good to experiment a bit with this moment when you slide out of this meditation, particularly if you have sat with closed eyes. Then to acknowledge that as soon as we open our eyes, quite often we collapse again into the identification with the central position. So there's immediately then the sense that you are somewhere here inside, and you look through your eyes into a world which is independent from you. So it's good to experiment a bit with that. How much can you actually bring this experience that the boundary between inside and outside starts to dissolve? How much can you bring this also into the visual sense? And that's quite difficult. Yeah? It's possible, but it's difficult. So immediately we feel we are looking at a world which exists independent out there, an objective world. And there's a contraction here and an identification with here. And that's the dualistic split, which is the cause of our suffering. So sometimes with open eyes, just the sentence, oh, this is like a dream, can loosen that a bit. Because in a dream, we know the experience that we can create a whole universe, including the dream body, and it scares us, or it makes us happy. And it's just a projection of the dreamer, of the conscious. It's a projection of the consciousness of the dreamer. Yeah. And the same is happening now also. So we are not so many, so you can always interrupt me if you have a question, a comment. And I want to now leave the section on Lojong in the text and move to the section of the 6 parameters. So this is the 6 parameters is a very common teaching within the Mahayana tradition. It is the practice of the Bodhisattvas. And they are also called the far-reaching attitudes. And they are, I mentioned them before, they are generosity, ethics, patience, joy, meditation, and wisdom. So what makes the parameters, what makes, for example, the practice of patience, well, let's start with generosity. So what makes the practice of generosity a parameter, a far-reaching attitude, is our understanding of emptiness. Yeah? So there is a kind of common generosity, which is, yeah, I'm this generous person, look, and I give something real, and that belongs to me. I give that to the other person, which is separate. Yeah. And I feel good about it. And probably I want to have something back. Yeah. So it's like there's strings attached usually in that kind of generosity. Yeah. It's like we want to have here thank you, or we have certain agendas what this person should do with the gift. Or it is clearly like a business transaction clothed in the code of generosity. And that's generosity, and it's a good thing, but it's not the parameter of generosity. So the parameter of generosity is realizing there's nobody giving, and there's nothing which you give, and there's also no recipient of the gift. When I say no, I don't say it doesn't exist. What I mean is there's no independent, solid, separate I here, which could give an independent, solid, separate gift to an independent, solid, separate other. Yeah. So the prajna parameter of generosity is completely effortless. It has no agenda. It is like you taking care of your foot. And you're also not thinking, wow, I'm such a wonderful person. I cut my nails. Yeah. Look, I have to put it onto Instagram. What a donation I make. I'm cutting my, I'm taking care of my foot. Yeah. So it is just natural. It's what you do. Yeah. You look after yourself. Just the yourself, which you look after, is a little bit bigger than this meat sack. Yeah. It's a bit bigger. It doesn't stop with the skin. Yeah. So there's no agenda, and there's also no like puffed up pride or feeling good about yourself. It's not worth mentioning. That kind of generosity is not worth mentioning because it's the most natural thing to do. You put food into this mouth, and you don't make a big story out of it. Yeah? So the passional parameter of patience, that's what we covered in our last meeting 2 weeks ago, or when that was. That's verse 27. Yeah, patience. Yeah. Verse 27. A bodhisattva, for bodhisattvas who want to be rich in virtue. So this is a bit strange language, who want to be rich in virtue. Yeah. So it sounds like who want to be a goody girl or something like that. You know? So good in virtue is who want to be full of vitality and joy and meaning and power and courage. Yeah. So that's what virtue means: vitality. Yeah. Constructive vitality. It's a spiritual energy which emerges when you align yourself with your deepest values, with your deepest yearnings, with your deepest longings. Yeah? That is to be rich in virtue. So for people like that, a person who hurts you is a precious treasure. Yeah? So that again is the Lojong teaching. Yeah? It's a precious treasure. A person who hurts you is a precious treasure. This is really useful. And because our life is full of assholes. At least my life. I don't know. Maybe you don't have that karma. It's just one damn asshole, narrow-minded fascists after another. Yeah, it's amazing. So a person who hurts you is a precious treasure. And so that's, of course, initially that is a kind of a rational sentence, you might say. Yeah. So then there needs to be a bit more flesh to this. So not only to say the sentence, but how do we actually start to see people like that? Yeah, particularly someone who hurts us. Yeah, and before Tongme Sampo gives this example, and one of the examples is so you. Even someone you have served and you have done so much for, like your children or someone you mentored, yeah. So you really gave that person a lot, and then they turn against you, and they not even say thank you. Yeah? So that is a good example how that kind of giving then as a mentor or as a parents came with agenda, yeah, like with some expectations. After all I have done for you, now this. Now you don't study Jura, but medicine. I'm so disappointed. Yeah. So that's, I mean, imagine we could do that to really give without wanting to have something back. And then if that person hurts us and even turns against us, harms us, uh, to respond not with hatred and anger and disappointment, and so it's a high it's a high vision. So and then he says, cultivate patience for everyone without irritation or resentment. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. Without irritation and resentment. So now, obviously, we can't stop irritation and resentment. They are too quick. Yeah. So this teaching is a bit. It can be easily misunderstood, and it is often misunderstood. And if this is misunderstood, what it leads to fake, it leads to pretense, it leads to being dishonest with yourself. It's like this pretending Buddhist smile. Yeah. Inside boiling, maybe so deep inside that you not even can feel it, and then pretending you are above irritation and annoyment, and you're above of being disappointed that you didn't hear thank you. Yeah. So it is not about having these responses, but to become aware of them, to step out of them, to not put them onto the driver's seat. Yes, you are disappointed, and you're allowed to have that feeling, and you are able to feel that feeling, but it does not need to make you harm back. Yeah? Because it comes and goes. It does not need to drive the car, yeah? The irritation and resentment. And that capacity of relying on stillness, on silence, that is patience. Yeah? In Shantideva, he, which is also a text on the 6 paramitas, Shantideva distinguished 3 types of patience. And the first one is a tolerance towards discomfort. And this is something really precious to cultivate for us as human beings. A tolerance towards discomfort. And in our culture, we are not really supported in cultivating this capacity. Yeah, so we kind of, we feel we deserve, we are entitled to not have pain, to not have grief, to not have anxiety. Yeah. So there is this, immediately we take a pill, or we distract ourselves, or we use drugs or entertainment to disconnect from discomfort. And that's not even, I mean, not even big things, even small things, like just a little boredom, a little restlessness, some dissatisfaction, some ache in your body. And in our Princess of the Pea mind, I don't know if you know that fairy tale, the Princess of the Pea. Princess, we are all princesses on a pea, yeah, like 10 mattresses, and there's a little pea and she can't sleep. And then, you know, and then when things become even more difficult in old age, sickness, and death, we can't handle it at all. So And it makes us so unhappy, you know. Like a toothache is like it's like the most horrible thing in the world. And meditation practice is a good place, yeah. And there's actually a certain meditation schools who really work with discomfort. Like if you go into some Thai forest monastery somewhere in the jungle, you know, they consciously sit on concrete floors without cushion, yeah, and they live, and they don't have mosquito nets in front of their window. And it's not so. This is not like this Christian idea of, you know, hurting yourself as some purification practice. And it's also not training endurance. So it's not like biting the teeth and getting through it. But it's when there's some pressure and we don't have much choice, then the only way out is the way through into the silence. And then when you find that, then you start to experience, wow, I can handle the discomfort of being a human. Yeah? And that's incredible it's incredible empowerment in that. Yeah? So we definitely can work on our capacity to be more spacious and relaxed with discomfort. And we can start with little things. Yeah? And meditation, I mean, everyone who has ever done a meditation retreat or some longer meditation sessions knows that it's always topic. Yeah, it's always a part of the practice. So obviously, that does not mean if we can do something about physical discomfort or pain. Of course, you take painkillers and things like this. So there's enough or medication. There's enough things which we have to work with, which we can't do anything about. Yeah? I can also understand particular young men who are called to that kind of a bit serious practice of consciously going into retreats where they sit for hours without moving on a concrete floor. So it's not what I would generally recommend to Swedish people. So there's more gentle ways, yeah. And if there's a painkiller and you have toothache, well, yeah, of course, then you take the painkiller, unless you want to take the opportunity to play a bit with it. It can be also like, okay, let's see, for 1 hour, I will just sit with the pain and then I will do something. That's also a possibility. But even if you have a toothache, I just had, that's why this comes up last week, I had an infection, I think it was. And there was an afternoon where I couldn't do anything than sitting with it. I was just sitting for 3 hours with this thing. It was amazing. So one can do that. But even if you take medication, and after 3 hours I did, then still there was an ache, you know, it was not finished. So then I had to do some patient's work anyway. So a lot of also emotional painkillers, let's just say, they usually just take the edge off. Yeah? And that's fine. But they often don't really remove the discomfort. Yeah? They just take the edge off. So there's still material for increasing patience. So the second kind of patience is, yeah, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello. Hi. Thank you for today and everything. I just wanted to also, because it's just that with to find the balance, because the Buddha says, you know, finding the middle way, you know, not to go into the extreme of, you know, and it's interesting this in relation to, you know, how far you should push yourself, enduring, and you know, also not going into the lazy aspect. And
yeah, that's always an interesting question, and it's different for different people. But first, I'm not talking about pushing yourself and enduring. Yeah? So this is something else. So it's relaxing. It's opening. Yeah, and partly this practice is also based on the insight that our suffering comes from resistance. So if there's more patience, like this also I experienced with the toothache. You know, there were moments where I could really let go, and the energy of the pain was still there, but it was not pain anymore. There was no suffering. There was just energy, yeah? And that's when you release the resistance. But you are right. In the Buddhist teachings, in general, we avoid extremes. Yeah, and what happens if you push too much? You make it worse. So you might be able to sit on the pain a little longer, but you actually make it worse because you're sitting with resistance. Yeah? So, and that capacity is different for different people. So it's very difficult to judge. And it's a good guideline in general to always have in mind that in Buddhism we avoid the extremes. That it is a part of gentleness, a part of the heart, and that can change within our life, and it's very different from person to person. I mean, for some people they can't, you know, for some people it's difficult to be in a hot room. Yeah? For some people it's difficult to be in a cold room, and and then one can work a little on the edge, yeah, but there's also it is also necessary not to exhaust yourself and harm yourself. There's people who harm themselves through these kind of practices. There's even stories about meditators who broke their bones in the meditation posture, or you know, all these yoga practitioners who you know have slipped bags and so on. So there is that danger of harming ourselves with spiritual practice, and that person who is able to do that actually needs to learn the other direction, yeah, to be more gentle, to be more kind, to be more soft. So the second patience, and that's what Tongme Sampo here is talking about, is the patience towards people, tolerance towards people. Yeah. And there's many different reflections and things one can do to open that space. For example, I started yesterday and this morning with this little reflection that we are all human beings and that we all suffer, and that there's a space where we can meet, seeing that people who are hurting us, that they are in pain and that they are suffering themselves, and that they will experience the consequences of their behavior. So there's many different reflections and angles on how we can respond to an harmful act without making the person into a bad, evil person, without making this cognitive fusion between a harmful act and the person. And with that, collapsing the complexity of everyone into this projection, enemy, and then communicating with that projection. And that projection is completely covering up the complexity of that person. So we respond, we attack and judge our own projection, and we don't see that person as Buddha nature. That person has been my mother in previous lives, and so on. So different angles on that. So that does not mean that we condone harmful behavior, obviously not. There is harmful, shitty, evil behavior in this world, and we should do something about it, also with force. But the people who do violence, who do harm us and others, they are not evil. Yeah, they are hurting. And most of the time, maybe always, they actually just pass on the pain they have received, like we do. So that's also part of the tolerance towards other people, is increasing the tolerance to yourself. Yeah, being in tune with your shadow. Yeah, so being in contact with your Buddha nature, but also being in contact that you can be also an asshole. Yeah, and that when resources are scarce in Sweden, I wonder what happens with the decency of all the Swedish people. Then the Vikings come out. And they are also there. They are also there. It's in me. So when people say to me, like with this kind of, a bit like, I'm so good, self-righteous, oh, I can't understand how anyone can act like this. That's just a lack of insight into the dimension and complexity of your own being. Of course you know how someone can rape another person. Of course you know how someone can torture another person. We're doing it ourselves in our little sneaky ways. Yeah. So this kind of reflections, they then help us to fill this sentence of being tolerant to people, with presence. So it's not enough to just say this sentence, oh, this person is a treasure. And part of that reflection is also to realize and to see that it is actually the difficult people which are an important part of our development. Yeah? Like your children, for example, particularly when they are teenagers. Yeah? Or your husband. Now, it's those people who crawl under our skin, which are difficult to be with. They are, for the Bodhisattva practitioner, for the Bodhisattva baby, that's the place to practice. And they bring out these buttons. Yeah? Without them, you wouldn't be aware of those. Yesterday, I talked about my mother. When I came here the last 2 years, every 2 weeks, I came for 4 or 5 days, and I stayed here, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm so cool. Finally, I have some results of my practice. Yeah, here's the proof. I lost that arrogance now again. Yeah? And it was only possible because I spent longer time with her. Yes.
So, yes, I was just wondering, because in the 37 verses, there's this verse that says something that you shouldn't have engaged with wrong company or something like that. Yeah. I don't remember exactly the words, but on the other hand, it seems like this is also the practice of a bodhisattva. If you can endure living or working with this. So I find that's kind of...
you can see there's sometimes slightly contradictory direction in the teachings always, like different medicine for different kind of people in different periods of our life. But here, wrong company would be people who seduce you to waste time, and you start to adapt and fall back in patterns and behaviors and feelings which you actually want to grow out of. But of course, as a bodhisattva, you wouldn't want to abandon them. Yeah. So the bodhisattva's journey is a journey of maybe temporarily removing yourself from these kind of situations and these kind of friends in order to return to these places so that you can serve, that you can, be there with them. So it's not like abandoning is not really the right word, but it's so let's say my mother would be someone I would be around, and then I would find myself to drink more and smoke more and play computer games and talk politics, right-wing racist politics. Then probably it would be good to keep a respectful distance to her in order to come back. Yeah. So sometimes this, or quite often, these verses, we can't see them literally, and often they are a bit too extreme to make a point, and then we hear a paradoxical thing like now, and then that helps us to find the middle way. What you said, the middle way. Okay. So I just want to mention the last kind of patience, and that is the patience which comes from understanding and seeing the complexity of situations. And that is the complexity of situation here. That's the teachings on karma. Yeah? And in the relationship to a difficult person, that would be this teaching that the outside world is a reflection of the inside world, and meeting a difficult person is actually an opportunity for you to heal or to purify certain habits. So seeing the complexity of situations, that everything is dependent on each other, also complexity of people. Yeah. So as I said before, a person who acts harmfully is not an evil person. So you see the complexity of the situation. And part of that complexity is understanding the connection with your own karma. Okay, so let's have 10 minutes break, and then we will go into have a short meditation, and then we will go into the next verse. See you in 10 minutes. So I would like to start with a short reflection on connecting with common humanity, like looking through the veil of outside appearances. So this is this kind of patience is sometimes called equanimity. There's different meanings of equanimity in meditation, but here it is a sense of kinship with other people. So deconstructing these categories of strangers, friend and enemy, kind of look through, deconstructing these projections and finding a place of connectedness deeper than our projections. So we have this tendency to feel a sense of separation or a sense of judgment towards people of a certain gender or lifestyle or age or race or language. Yeah. So that leads to often feel, I can't relate to that kind of person. They are strangers. And just very shortly, and I would like you to look at the screen and to kind of look at the people here. So we will use ourselves as example, yeah, and also include yourself, yeah. Because you're also a human being with feelings, yeah? And it is of course necessary to have the tenderness or the compassionate, the loving gaze, not only towards other people, but it starts with yourself. And I already mentioned some of the points, so it's nothing new. I just want to take the opportunity again to shift again into a connectedness between us, and then also broadening that to others. Yeah? So if you look around, and then I will just say a few things around that kind of recognition. And the first is we are human beings and we have feelings. Yeah? So every one of us, and we all know laughter and joy and love, but we also know fear and sadness, distress, despair. Yeah, so you kind of you feel inside of you, and then you recognize, wow, these people, they are the same. They are just the same. They know this kind of experiences. Then the people you see here, they all have been hurt. Yeah, so they, in their past, they experienced loss, but also they grew up in an environment which didn't welcome them actually for how they deserve to be welcomed, to be loved for who they are, and to be respected for who they are. So just like you, they were under pressure to prove themselves, and so in all of us, there's a sense of I'm not good enough. I need to be more of this, more of that. I need to be more humorous. I need to be more extrovert or introvert, or yeah, I'm just not good enough. Something is wrong with me. Yeah, I'm not lovable as I am. So that's for everyone here. At least I have not met one person yet who was not suffering from that. And that's the same, and you know it from yourself, so you can see it in the faces of others. I mean, we are basically all, we all have cracks and wrinkles, and yeah, and our body and our faces show the hurt we have experienced, the disappointments with our life, with ourselves. Yeah? So, and our body and our face shows it. We can't hide it actually. The other people see it in you and you see it in others. It's not a secret actually. And then everyone here really appreciates to be treated kindly and to be looked at with kindness and with respect. And it matters to those people in the same way it matters to you. It's a longing in all of us to belong, to be seen who we are. We all want to be just ourselves, and we hold back. So we all hold back also. We are afraid to show our vulnerability. We are afraid to show our feelings, and so we are all more or less in a bit of a straitjacket of trying to hold back, not engaging. Best would be like the passive observer of everything, because if people would find out who we are, then they would reject us. So better hiding, not showing. Yeah, and then that specific Swedish problem of who do you think you are? don't stick out, don't shine. So it's also quite common in Germany, but it's not a national law in Germany. So it's still a bit appreciated, more appreciated to shine in Germany, to stick out. Then we all experience the old age, sickness, and death. Yeah? So we are in different stages here in this group. Yeah, but we all will lose our hair and teeth and nice skin and lose our fitness, muscles. It's going down. You can do yoga forever. It's going down. There's nothing to stop that. And then we all will die. Yeah. So that's also, we all will die. So, and someone will be the first. Someone of us will be the first. We don't know who, but it's going to happen quite soon. Life is short. It's quick. I mean, I'm 55 now. I'm far over the mountain. It's going down into the valley of death. The biggest part of my life is finished. There's not much more coming. I mean, I don't need to think anymore about what will I do when I grow up, when I'm grown up. Like maybe studying medicine or something like that. It's finished. It's done. This is it. There will be a bit more of the same music coming out of this mouth, but basically there's nothing more. Yeah, and it's like this for all of us at one point. And this is it's actually a big insight, to realize that all the people you meet and you are angry about and you struggle with, they're almost dead. So is it worth it to hold grudges and keep forgiveness away, or so is it really worth it with someone who is almost dead and who will die? Our lives are very precious and fragile. And then there's also this that we are all unique. Yeah. So these people, and also including you, there was never a flower like that. And there will never be a flower like that. Never, ever. It's quite amazing that everyone is different. Same on one level and on one level, but also at the other hand, completely unique. So it's worth to write a novel about everyone here. A big novel. Because all of your lives are so amazing and fascinating and rich and unique. Nobody ever has done the same journey like you, and nobody ever will. And then we all have Buddha nature. So we all, within us, within our essence, we have this source of wisdom and light, which wants to shine through all of us. And it's probably the same light, the same light which wants to shine through all of us. The same essence love which wants to shine through to all of us. So that's part of this reflections, and they are words, but so it's about reflecting in this direction and then open to that dimension of our connection. And if you do that, it can be quite overwhelming, because suddenly you realize there are no strangers, and that enemies become friends, and enemies again, and friends become enemies. So it's the surface. So imagine one would do this kind of reflection every day for a few weeks, and then go out into shops, and the way you relate to your customers, and suddenly you see them as people with feelings. And then we can also include the animals. They are also people with feelings. Pigs and cows and dogs. With dogs, it's more obvious for us, but maybe not so much with pigs and cows and chickens. They are also people wanting to be happy and avoiding suffering, just like us. So we can have this feeling, certainly for our dog, but we can also have it towards a chicken, a bird, an ant even. Which makes it difficult at one point to squash mosquitoes. So that's the reflection on equanimity. And I want to move to the next verse, 28. So listeners and solitary Buddhas working only for their own welfare. So this is listeners and solitary Buddhas, so that's the Sutrayana or Shravakayana, where the aim of your practice is self-liberation. And it is probably part of our own practice, so that's why it is being mentioned here. So to recognize this in us. So how much our spiritual practice is still about me, me feeling better. And probably for most of us, that's the entry point into any kind of spiritual practice. So usually if we go to the yoga center or to a Buddhist meditation center, it's mainly about us wanting to feel better, trying to find a different way to live with our stress and our burnout. So it is a step, we all do, and probably there's a lot of that still in us, that we are expecting our spiritual practice to make us feel better. So it's nothing bad. It's a necessary step. But then in the Mahayana tradition, we open that. So, and then in the second line, he talks about the Bodhisattva. Practice as if their heads were on fire. To help all beings, pour your energy into practice. It is the source of all abilities. This is the practice of a Bodhisattvas. So practice as if your head is on fire. So I don't know how what does it with you. So it's a bit in this category in one of the first verses when he says practicing day and night. Yeah? So it's like this. It's a call to that passion, to that joyful passion. So it's not like, it doesn't mean like being panic, yeah. So it's just it's a metaphor of that intensity. It's a metaphor for the intensity in one's practice, for the passion, so that that there's an undercurrent in your life, a deep yearning to wake up. And so in the center of your life is that undercurrent, and it starts to pervade all your activities. So instead of practicing yoga for having a nice ass, you practice yoga because you want to be more healthy, more vital in your service to others. And you practice yoga because you want to grow on the path of awakening. So then the same activity becomes something completely different when you pour your energy into practice. And here, practice, as I said before, does not mean formal practice. So that's a little part, yeah, which is sometimes completely overrated by some people. They feel they practice because they have an hour morning meditation. But that's actually not the important thing. The important thing is how do you treat your partner? How much of your so wonderful morning prayers actually change you, actually transform you, actually heal you? Yeah. And sometimes the daily practice can be helpful, but often it is actually more an obstacle. I see that very often, people practicing for years and years and nothing changes. They stay the same tight, stressed, judgmental people. Yeah? So obviously it's helpful to have a daily practice, but it's not that important. Yeah? So like this meditation we just did, you don't need to do it in the morning in a formal practice. You can do it in the train. It's much more important actually that it surfaces in our daily life. So this is then also the question, how to turn daily life and things we do anyway. How can we bring the Dharma there? And unfortunately, when I talk with people, often they don't value that enough. They kind of they say, wow, yeah, I can't really practice and I can't get a daily meditation practice. And then I say, so what? How are you at your work? How much of these lojong verses surface while you're working? How much awareness do you bring into your relationship? So that's the more important question, as if how many hours every day do you meditate, or how much mantra do you say? So practice as if your heads were on fire. Obviously, that needs to have a deep recognition of that death is certain and the time of death is uncertain. So that brings that urgency into this. Yeah, now is the moment, today. Bring awareness to this moment, to today. Bring kindness into this moment, whatever you experience. That's more important. And then slowly, the aspiration to wake up for the benefit of others becomes more and more genuine. It becomes actually the compass in your life. The aspiration is already good, it's very powerful. But slowly, you will find yourself thinking like that, learning the art of rest, learning the art of healing yourself. Not just because you want to feel better, but because you want to make a contribution with your life. You do it also for yourself, but there is that vision behind. To transform this body into a vessel of bodhicitta, into a vessel of love. Any questions, comments? So now it comes the perfection of meditation, meditative awareness. So that's verse 29. Understanding that emotional reaction are dismantled by insight supported by stillness. Cultivate meditative stability that passes right by the four formless states. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. Cultivate meditative stability that passes right by the four formless states. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. So emotional reaction are dismantled. Yeah? So our reactivity is dissolved, dismantled, deconstructed, seen through by insight supported by stillness. So insight supported by stillness, this is the union of shamatha and vipassana meditation. Okay? So shamatha practice is the practice of calming down the mind. Here the relative practice of calming down the mind. So here this stillness is not talking about the silence, the mighty silence. That's something else. So this is the relative practice of shamatha with a object. You know? Initially, often the breath. Yeah? So you calm down the mind, and peace arises. Yeah? Because if you calm down the mind, then you don't have problems at that moment. Because in order to have problems, you need to think about them. So you pay your attention to one object, and you stay engaged with that object, and your mind is more present, more clear, more calm. But that is not healing or dismantling reactivity. In order to do that, you need to bring vipassana into the meditation. And vipassana here means insight into the three characteristics: anicca, anatta, and dukkha. Yeah. The non-static nature, impermanence, dukkha, the dissatisfactory nature of all our experience, and anatta, the teachings on no self. So with these three insights, combined with a still mind, you dismantle, you deconstruct, you liberate yourself from emotional reactions. This is an important point in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, that calming down the mind through shamatha practice is only a provisional piece. So just calming down the mind is not going to liberate you. It's not an awakening practice. So we need to combine that calmer mind with our understanding of emptiness, our understanding of selflessness. We need to combine vipassana and shamatha practice. If you practice vipassana without a calm mind, then it's not very powerful. Yeah? So that's why this combination. It's possible, but it will not go very deep, because you can't really go deep into the nature of things if your mind is not focused. So if you do a breathing meditation and you look into the impermanence of the breath and your mind goes somewhere else, then it can't be very deep, the insight. So, and in more gradual trainings within the Buddhist tradition, like also, for example, in the Geluk tradition, there's a sequence to that. So usually you would start with the shamatha practice, calming down the mind. And then once you have some skills there and you have trained in the 9 stages of shamatha, then you would study emptiness and attain an intellectual understanding. And then you would apply that understanding of emptiness in your meditation, in your investigation. this is something, you know, from a Buddhist point of view, one would maybe criticize other practitioners who have attained deep absorptions. So this is what the four formless states. So the four formless states, they are meditative absorptions. So in the Tibetan tradition, they have the system of the 9 stages. So in the 9 stages, when you have attained shamatha, so that would mean that you are able to stay engaged with the primary meditation objects effortlessly through the whole session. But then there's even deeper places of calmness, and they are called the four formless stage, or the 4 dhyanas, or the 4 absorptions. The Tibetans are not interested in that, because they say if you have attained the 9th stage of shamatha, that's good enough for awakening. So you don't need to have a more subtle mind. Yeah? So the 9th stage of shamatha is enough to break through. So why bother about the other about the other states? So that's what is meant here by Tongpa Sanpo. The union of vipassana and shamatha is more worse than the 4 formless states. They are actually seen in the Tibetan tradition as a bit of a sidetrack, an unnecessary sidetrack, where people get stuck. So that's what some meditative tradition would criticize in others, where resting in the 4 formless state is seen as awakening, is seen as enlightenment. I mean, it's the complete bliss, yeah. But you're stuck, you're useless, and the potential of the disturbing emotions is not addressed. Yeah? The distortion of reality is not addressed through a calm mind. Yeah. Any questions to that? That was a lot of information. It takes a few months to kind of understand. I just gave the headlines now, yeah. So 9 stages of shamatha. Okay, what are they? Yeah? So, but you know, there's teachings on that and trainings, yeah. And then also the whole teachings on emptiness on a rational, analytical level, and then how to look at your experience with your understanding of emptiness. It's a very beautiful system, you know, very clear and gradual, step by step. It's quite amazing, and it works. You know? It really brings results. It's just that we need to do it with our hair on fire. So because we have this precious boat, which we don't know how long. And we don't know how long we have access to these teachings and to this experience, because there's plenty of people still around who have done this, yeah, who have actually walked the path, and who are proving to us that this works. Unfortunately, they can't do it for us, because we have to do this in the same way they did. The good news is we have more than one life for this project, so we can relax. We have all the time we need. So that's meditation. And of course, I mean, this is often in this short root text. I mean, we could now spend 1 year with this first, yeah? and really unpack it, yeah. So these texts, they are very rich. Like a Tibetan master could teach on this text for 3 years, and it wouldn't get boring. You know? So they are a bit of a bouillon of the teachings, and then we need to like a condensation, an extraction of the teachings, and then we can unpack them, and we will unpack them in our practice. So, and then the last one, that's the sixth perfection, which is wisdom. And wisdom actually is what turns the other far-reaching attitudes into the six parameters. So the six parameters is present in all the other parameters. It is what makes generosity into the parameter of generosity is the sixth parameter, the wisdom part. Without wisdom, the five perfection are not enough to attain full awakening. Yeah? So without wisdom, so without the sixth parameter, without the sixth parameter, the five perfections are not enough. Yeah? So wisdom, the wisdom part is the ingredients which makes it a path of awakening. Cultivate wisdom and skill, free from the three domains. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. So cultivate wisdom and skill. Wisdom here always means the wisdom of seeing things as they are. So the wisdom of seeing emptiness. That's what wisdom is. Skill here is the five first perfections. That's skill. And any other skillful methods, all the other Buddhist practices, generosity, patience, compassion. So also compassion, for example, there is that kind of dualistic compassion. So, I'm so compassionate. There's a poor person suffering, and I'm the compassionate person, and there's a real person, and that person is separate, and I have compassion to that person. That's not the compassion of the Bodhisattva. So that's like common compassion, which is a good thing, but it's not the practice of a Bodhisattva. What makes it a practice of a Bodhisattva is the wisdom ingredient. And the wisdom ingredient means it's free from the three domains. And the three domains refer to recognizing the emptiness of the one who is compassionate, recognizing the emptiness of the compassionate act, and recognizing the emptiness of the person who receives your compassion. All other kinds of generosity, all other kinds of compassion, they are contaminated. They are contaminated by the narcissistic self-importance. So all other kind of compassion is what Trungpa Rinpoche calls idiot compassion, which is it's a bit of a funny term. Maybe a little bit too much, because I mean, who would be our society without idiot compassion? So we need all the helpless helper. Otherwise our hospitals wouldn't work. So if you notice that, and we will, of course, we notice that. So in us, that kind of kindness or compassion, which is actually contaminated agendas, seeking. It's often a seeking, actually, a seeking love. So there's a hurt in us, and then we become kind. So it's not coming from the fullness of realizing non-separation. So what we are, the vision is non-dual compassion. So there's neither someone here, nor is there an act, nor is there the other which needs our compassion. So that's wisdom. Cultivate wisdom and skill. So whatever we do in our practice, we bring our understanding of emptiness in it. So in our dedication, that would be, so we dedicate the merit, which does not exist, to all the other beings which do not exist, so that they maintain, so that they might attain fully awakening, which does not exist. Yeah. So when I say now, which does not exist, obviously I'm not talking about nihilism. So I would need to add, which do not exist in the way they appear. Yeah. So which do not exist inherently, solidly, findably. But sometimes it's just more funny to say which do not exist. It gives this little, the little like, yeah. And that little like, that, that's actually what we negate. That's what we refute. We refute. That's the meaning I which does not exist. So it brings it out a little. That kind of marikba, ignorance. So in our practice and in our dedications and prayers, it's really helpful, at least on a conceptual level, on an aspiration level, to add that's what Lama Zopa always does. When he does a meditation, so he always says, okay, we dedicate the merit which is empty to all beings which are empty, so that they might that they will awaken to full Buddhahood, which is empty. Okay, that was a lot of talking. So I hope you are still somewhat connected with your inner weather. So when you leave the session now, and just notice how our meetings today affected you, and so what you take with you. Does it resonate with you for a while? And it's enough, it's only one thing. So then it was worth to be here. If you just remember one thing which stays with you, like one sentence, one word, one feeling, and then you bring that with you, and chew on it and become familiar with it. And it can be many different things. It can be the certainty of death, or rely on silence, or so. It's one little thing after another, and then you integrate it more and more. And the next time it will be something else, so you can add something else. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Maybe you can read a bit in the book or in the verses, or listen to a guided meditation or something like this. And then we meet again tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And then maybe I'm not covering all of the rest, but I will go then into the last part of the text. And it is a Buddhist tradition not to finish a text, because then one has reasons to come back. It's good for the health of the teacher not to finish texts, because that creates the condition for a long life. It's really true. It's not a joke. No master finishes a text. They always leave something They always leave something out. And even if it creates the connection for next life. So that's their thinking. Okay, see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention and have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Thank you, Stephan. Goodbye, everybody.
Yes, goodbye.